I've walked the line between worlds and am well versed in death. But I want to have faith in humans. Give me something to believe in. Earth below me, sky above me, fire within me. Brought to you by UPRN Network. I'm Trish Moe, and this is The Missing Piece.
Good evening. I'm Trish, and we are broadcasting live out of New Orleans with United Public Radio Network. And I want to thank Carnation for sponsoring this hour. I'm actually in Kansas, and I am so excited tonight to welcome my guest, the Rune Walker, Kenn Edwards. He is an artist, photographer, small business owner, host to numerous podcasts, and is coming to us from the great state of Utah. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have very similar bios.
I know. I noticed that. I was it makes sense that I'm intuitively drawn to specific people. So
yeah, I love your intro where it said that you walk between worlds, because I actually use that quite a bit in my it's one of my Rune Walker between worlds. It's just kind of what I do. So I think I loved that when I heard that. That was the first time I'd heard that.
That's awesome.
Loved it. Yeah.
Thank you. I love synchronicities with people. That's big on connecting us all.
Absolutely.
So there's so many reasons you have overcome so many obstacles in life, and your story, from what I've read and know about you, is amazing. So I guess starting from the beginning, you grew up in rural Utah.
Yeah.
I know, some people might not be as familiar with Utah, but what was that like?
So, the town I grew up in, when I grew up in it, was actually about 300 people. So,
Wow.
Very small town. The house I live in now, my grandfather was born in, my great grandparents lived in. It's a very small 3-bedroom house. They raised 6 kids there. It was that everyone knows everybody, and we're almost all related, and somehow. Everything, even if you weren't Mormon, which is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, even the Christmas pageant in my hometown, we all went to the church and had the Christmas pageant. So I lived right next door to the church. My parents didn't actually go to church. I think sending us to church was their quiet time for the week. It was maybe their adult time. So I was a very devout member of that faith for quite a long time. And until I was 21, I actually went on a Mormon mission. So I was a missionary for the church in the south of France. So,
wow.
So growing up, I had all of the, so looking back now, I realize that my gifts and my talent for connecting to the other side is what put me into a lot of leadership positions within the church, within my own small part of the church. And, it also taught me to have faith, even though I've had my moments where I've lost my faith. That's, I think, one of the very, very important things for us to gain while we're here is our ability to have faith. I don't even think it matters what religion you believe in or spirituality. You just need to learn to have faith. And that's one of the major things I think about. So growing up there was very sheltered, very, it was bland, man. It was bland, but it gave me an appreciation for, I live in the mountains. So it gave me, my Sunday was at church, but then also my dad would come home and my dad, we would hop in the truck and drive up into the mountains, and he and I would ride around and you know, take the guns out and shoot them, or go collect firewood, or just go hang out. And that was probably, you know, now looking back, I have a very hard time being far from those mountains because it's home. Um, Not necessarily my house, but that's ancestral too. So that's very important to me as well. So growing up was very religious, spiritual. I always, you know, it's always been a part of my life until I kind of realized that probably right around 21 that you know, you can't really be it's very good to be heterosexual and monogamous in that religion. If you are anything other, it doesn't really, like, that eventually catches up with you, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily work.
And that's what I was going to say for listeners. Now, Mormonism is, I mean, it's a pretty strict religion, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it's you know, there are rules and commandments, and you follow them, and that's how you get to the highest level of heaven. That's going to be a very deep discussion into Mormonism, which I can no longer have. So, yeah, so it was very strict. I you know, no drinking, no smoking, no premarital sex. You go to church every Sunday. You do all of these things, which I'm very grateful for, the kind of the background it gave me in some of those characteristics, or some of those skills as far as spiritual things go. So yeah, I mean, that was great. Then when I found out, you know, like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to life than what I'm experiencing right now. And, you know, I think I might not be as straight-laced as that goes. That's when I sat down with God in that religion, and said, listen, man, you either have to take these urges away from me and let me be here, or you're not going to. And then I have to walk away because I can no longer follow those commandments. And he didn't respond, or my life would be very different now. You know, I would have 6 or 7 kids, probably grandkids by now, and then no tattoos. It would be complete. My life would be completely different.
Right.
Still good, but different.
So when you finally, you know, came to that place of, you know, kind of, I'd say a crossroads, you know, of where your life was going and what your path was, how did you go about kind of, I guess, separating? You know, that's a huge change. That changes your entire lifestyle. You know, it's going from living kind of in a box, it sounds like, to just branching out and discovering very, you know, all new things.
Yeah. I'm still going through that. I call it deprogramming, but I mean, we all have different words for it. Well, I started to party. I started to, let's see what's out here. You know, like drinking. I never did hard drugs, which I somewhat regret, because I think that would have been an amazing experience. And now I'll have to be like 65, you know, doing drugs, having fun. But I've got a ways to go for that hits. I did that, and then it actually took me until, let's see, probably about 34. So a good, you know, 10, 12 years of just seeing what was out there. I lived in different places. I lived in the Mid-South. I lived near Denver. I've lived in Portland. Like, I've lived all over and traveled quite a bit, which I'm very grateful for. And when I finally remembered, I love the word remembered. When I finally remembered my ancestors and I began to remember my connection with the runes, even though I had never really seen them before. I was working with a mentor of mine, and she had done this exercise, and it kind of refers to a passage in the Bible, but I made a small coin of clay and put into it symbols. So I had to actually physically give back the coin that Abrahamic God had given me, and kind of cancel the contract. Basically, I'm getting out of my contract. Here's your money back, and we're done. So that took a good 10 years, and we all are trying to deprogram ourselves from those thoughts, those thought patterns, those, I call them cow paths. Cows get into one rut and they follow it. They don't deviate, man. It's like our brains. That's what happens in our synapses, right? We form these when we're younger. It's harder to break them apart when we're older. And so now we have to act. It takes a little bit more energy and a little bit more time, but I'm still trying to break away from some of those
I was
monotheistic
laughing
things.
because the funny thing, which I always remembered about Utah, and it's just funny that resonated when you said about the cows, is all the cattle guards. Okay, so I'm like, oh wow, that kind of represents,
yes,
keeping people. But for people that don't know what those are, it's like a grate in the road, so they don't even have to have like gates, right, or fences, because they won't walk over them, right?
Right. Yeah, you'll have fences that come into the road and at the road it's metal bars. They've actually dug down 2 or 3 feet, and they put metal bars across it so your car can go, but the cows won't go. Yeah. It's genius. I mean, it's scary though. Like hitting a cow or a horse or like open range, like hitting those animals is really
Oh
is
yeah,
really
I mean, being in
scary.
Kansas, yes, I
Oh yeah. Yes. Yep. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you kind of bring that up, because I feel like a lot of times people think the runes, the runes which I'm referring to I call them the runes of Northern Europe, because they kind of branch off into 3 sections. So you have the Younger Futhark, the Elder Futhark, and the Anglo-Saxon Futhark. How they developed and branched off kind of happens with the migration of people and the dispersal of religion and spirituality as people grew across Northern Europe, pre-Christian times. And I feel very much like the runes kind of fit surviving in that kind of culture and that climate. It's interesting. And yet, like, to me, my personal podcast is called Rune Walking in Modern Times, and it's called that because we look at them, and a lot of people refer to these symbols, which I have on my neck. They're only an alphabet, or they only have certain meanings. But like when it comes down to it, like it's wisdom that is still accessible and relevant for us, and really I think kind of passed down genetically as well, that remembrance of those things.
Now, how did you said they kind of just came to you. I don't even know how to describe when that happens to people. How did that happen to you, I guess? Do you think it had it happened at a point in relation to you separating from the church, or from health issues, things like that?
Yep. So I had just moved to Portland, Oregon, and I had walked into a books. So this was when you get to be my age, you kind of forget how long ago things were. I'm not even that old. I shouldn't say that. I talk like I'm like Santa, but I'm not Santa Claus. Probably, it's like 2009. I know it was 2009. So I walked into a bookstore called New Ren, which is New Renaissance Books. And they happened to have a lady there doing readings that day. And I thought, well, shoot, I'm game. Like I like having a tarot reading. I've tried tarot in the past. It does not connect with me. I do not connect with it. Where it's like the relationship that was just didn't even get started. Like I get some of the symbolism and the symbolism, but I don't connect that way. So I went up to the little room she was doing a reading in, and she's this crazy white-haired woman, Ingrid Kincaid, and you can find her at ingridkincaid.com.
Kincaid.
She became my mentor.
Nice.
And she read her readings, her intuitive readings were done with the runes. And that was how I got connected back in. I was very much drawn to the energy she possessed, being in right relation with her own spirituality and the spirituality of our ancestors and the earth. So that's where it kicked back in. It was way after I had left, 15 years after I had left the church, but at the right time. And so, gosh, my relationship with them now is 13 years old-ish now. I've been studying and working with the runes for that long. It probably wasn't until, I moved back to Utah, like 2016, that I allowed myself to even consider that I had other gifts. But my door opened because of the runes. So my connection to the other world, or the other worlds that are unseen, comes from the runes and the cosmology of the north. So the great tree Yggdrasil, which holds all of us, holds everything, all the unseen worlds and seen worlds, and that's where my connection is. And it wasn't until then that I really started developing and opening. Sorry, wrong words. It wasn't until then that I began to acknowledge my abilities as a psychic or a medium or a channeler. And so all of that kind of just came from the runes. So for me, they're way more than just little symbols on on stones, or more than an alphabet.
Right.
And I kind of think that's how it all develops. Like, you began, I watched your last episode, and I love how you described growing up in the mountains near Roswell, which, by the way, I still haven't been to, but I want to go to. And your friends were the trees and the fairies and like that kind of stuff. I really think like that's an amazing beginning.
Yeah, and so I when I was older, I mean, this was probably only a few years ago that I discovered runes myself. And it started, I was looking, I'm a photographer as well. And I started looking back, I was taking pictures of symbols I would see in nature. I'd see some sticks like in a certain, and I just started, and what I had done all my life, actually, that I didn't even realize I had done, I had pictured anytime I would walk into, especially as a little kid, into a new building or an atmosphere or whatever, even when I was afraid of the dark in my own room, I would picture these symbols, all over my like doorways and walls. And I didn't realize what I was doing or even what the symbols stood for or what they meant until a few years ago. I'm 40 now. So it was much later in my life. And so I think it's fascinating, hearing how people, because it's true, it's something that's that is deeply embedded in our ancestry and our DNA, even because it's nothing I'd ever studied, the same. Yep. It sounds like the same with you. Now, speaking of that connection, the importance of the connection, I guess, just to, it's not just to the source and to your ancestors and to nature, but, well, I guess, can you kind of describe, as far as the runes go, how that all kind of ties into aiding in your, spiritual transformation?
Sure. So I've began to write like 14 books on the runes, and because like, first of all, that's how we get credibility in this world, right? Like, you have to write a book, and then people can reference your book, and then you gain some sort of badge of, oh, I know what I'm talking about. And there are so many, like, I don't know, the runes are prevalent at the moment, and on the forefront, and a lot of people are writing books. Ingrid, like I mentioned before, she has 2 books out. Brilliant writer, brilliant teacher. I love her. And I for me, I always ask the runes, what do you want to talk about? Like, if I start getting involved, things start getting screwed up, right? Like, it's better for me to become the channel. And I feel very much that's what my calling is in this kind of lifetime. So my connection to the runes, one of the things that I wrote about, began to write about, is I see them as a way or ability to transform. So they're absolutely transformational beings. So they have the first ones that came to me. How do I put this? When you start off studying them, they come in kind of an order. I don't teach them that way because I will pull them from my little bag. And that's what we talk about in class when I'm teaching class. So I believe that they're very specific to, like, if I were teaching you, we would start somewhere different because they have different patterns of energy for you and will connect differently with you. So we'll teach it differently. So I kind of allow them to guide us wherever we need to go, and allow that. For instance, today we're going to talk about transformation. I promise. Hang with me. The runes I pulled today, when you and I spoke earlier about what do I want to talk about, and I'm like, let's let the runes decide what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
That even happened to me. I was approached to potentially teach a conference, and they're like, what do you want to teach about? We want you to teach about the runes. And I'm like, well, let me see what they want to talk about, which I think always puts people into a little bit of a weird, like, wait, what? Like, you're not in control of this? I'm like, well,
I totally get it, but yes.
Right. Thank you.
People who are not in
it's like
the weird psychic world here. We
yeah,
whatever you call it. I don't even like to put that title on it.
No, because it doesn't encompass it.
No.
So today when I pulled, we're talking about connection to the tree, which is connection to all of us, right? We're talking about cycles of nature. We're talking about cycles of night and day and balance. And we're talking about balance of life and death. So specifically today, the message for them, if I can get out of my own way, I get out of their way, maybe is a good way to put it. You guys, we keep putting this linear time frame onto everything. And I think if there's anything, like, there's a ton that coronavirus has shown us, but one thing that it has shown us is that everything is cyclical. We start, we come back, we start, we come back around. Like, and you have to be able to let go of certain things to be able to pick up new things. My favorite analogy is, if I'm dragging a dead horse with both hands, I can't pick up anything new. I eventually have to let go of that horse to be able to pick up new things. And I really feel like, man, we are holding on so tight to the norm that we used to have. and we have to let that go because it's not going to be the norm. We actually can't function in that. We won't be able to. It'll be very tough. So kind of going with that, when I do readings for people, we pick up, how do I do this? Okay, so this tapestry behind me is a series of threads that are woven together, and because we weave them together in the same way, we get a pattern. So whenever I'm working with people with the runes and doing readings for them, we're picking up one of these threads in the tapestry, maybe one that has to do with career, maybe one that has to do with love, maybe one that has to do with family. You might pick up family and 14 threads get pulled up because that's how interwoven we are. The runes will tell me and tell us what thread that is, and what, if we continue weaving the same pattern behind me, you're going to get the same results. But how do we get different results? We have to change the pattern. So I'm constantly working with people looking at their patterns of behavior. Shoot, I'm constantly looking at my patterns of behavior. It's pattern, right? Patterns of behavior and the runes are the things that are transformational. So like this rune, I'm going to see if I can do this. Awaz, it's the yew tree, but in some instances it's a defense rune, but it's also, it'll spin. So the roots have to match the branches. It is the rune that, to me, a lot of times in readings speaks to the balance of life and death. We have to let things go to be able to pick up new things. So they're all absolutely transformational in telling us what it is that we have to change in our patterns of behavior to make a difference, or make different choices and have different things be our result. Wow. Did that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, and it even resonated with something personal. You know, I have my other, I guess, brand business, which is Savage Roots Alchemy. And in my logo, that's obviously that's the first rune. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, I love that. Hell yeah. Synchronicities. That's what it's all about.
And what is endarkenment? I just saw that on here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I love.
Not familiar with that.
Okay. So hopefully, I never mean to offend people, which is why I've been very good. I haven't sworn once tonight. I'm glad I asked you that before we started, because usually I'm like a trucker. So, okay. Endarkenment. Okay. Endarkenment is another word for enlightenment. Oh. Now, the thing that differs is that enlightenment is something that we see as out. Like we're going to become enlightened, right? Well, endarkenment is actually taking the wisdom of the runes, or actually the wisdom of anything, not the wisdom, the knowledge. Okay. The knowledge. Bringing it into your body and letting your body translate that and process it like a computer and see if it resonates with you. So one of the things working with the runes, we have 3 ways of knowing. We have our intellect, our emotional intelligence, which sits about the heart, and then we have our instinctual intelligence, which sits in our gut. A lot of times nowadays people say, oh, trust your gut, but it's usually when there's something wrong. Mm-hmm. But what does your gut feel like when something's right? It's not something we're commonly taught to interpret. We're not taught to go, okay, gut, what feels right? Like we're in my instinct, what feels right? So the concept of endarkenment is actually if you bring the thought, the knowledge into your brain, you can move the energy of that down into your emotional center of knowing. Move that vibration. Sometimes it's as easy as putting your finger on top of your head, putting your finger in your heart space, making a line between the two and moving it down. Doing the same thing with your instinct, moving it down into your gut. Let your body process some of that information, because a lot of times we get overwhelmed when our mind cannot comprehend or compute those things, but we don't allow our body to try and do that for us. And so endarkenment is the process of taking the knowledge, bringing it into your body, letting your body process it, and becoming endarkened, but figuring out where in your body that wisdom sits and accessing it because it's already there. All of the keys and all of the answers are already inside of us. We're just, especially nowadays, not taught to listen to our bodies. And it's becoming we're getting better at it. We're getting way better at it. But for a while there, it was like, don't listen to your body, don't listen to your urges, don't listen to it telling you it's in pain, give it medicine. We have all those things. But endarkenment is that process of really finding the wisdom inside of your body, not necessarily outside.
Go within.
Yep.
It's interesting.
Absolutely.
Now, so you mentioned you teach classes. Where are those online also, I assume?
Yes.
Where can people find those?
All right. So my website is runewalker.com. And on Facebook, if you're there, it's at Northern European Mysteries, I believe. I might have screwed that up. Anyway, right now I have it's kind of a basic rune class that I put together. It's by secret group on Facebook. So if you want access to it, and you don't have Facebook, we can do that. It actually comes with a very rough workbook that I was putting together for class. You get a PDF of that, and it's self-paced. So it's like a five video class, and they're each an hour. And so we cover some background about the runes, and then we go into each rune individually. And that's a great beginning class. A lot of the time in that class, I'm in channel connected to channel a little bit. I call it stepping into the stream, and
that's a good term.
It's sometimes it's icy and cold, but you're connected. So I'm connected that way, and the goal is to make sure that if I'm talking about Dagas, that Dagas has a say in what it is I'm talking about as well. There are a lot of times when I don't know, you never specifically will read that ear is a rune of death. It's the rune of the grave. But I'm pretty sure miscarriage was not one of the things that they thought about 2,000 years ago and that it meant, but it has shown up for me in readings as being a miscarriage for people, and it was right on. So there's a lot of books that tell you here are the meanings of them.
Right.
What I try and do in my classes is give you, I don't like a 201 class. Yes, those are the meanings. Here are the basics, but here's also how I've experienced it, and possibly in conjunction with other runes, the meaning shifts a little bit and it opens up and it broadens. It's kind of you have a stalactite, right? The very tip of it is smaller, but as you work back up it, this is a poor representation, the stalactite gets bigger and bigger. So the meaning might just be the very tip, but as we look up it and we engage with it in a little bit back to the source way, the meaning enriches and opens up.
So do you think it's my knowledge, like I said, of runes is, I'm sure it's much more in depth than I realize, and I have studied to an extent, but I don't, it's kind of like tarot. I don't read tarot. I read, well, for myself, I do, the same with runes,
right.
But not for other people. And in tarot, it's kind of the same concept where people see the death card and they're like, oh my God, somebody's going to die. No, it can mean numerous different things. The same with so in runes, is that what you're saying? They don't necessarily, it's not one specific term, when you see all of those.
Yes, I say yes. But because I've experienced them that way.
Right.
There will be people who say, nope, it only means this. Well, okay. Then for you, that's all it means. That is great. I
Right.
would love for you to try and divine for yourself about cattle
Right.
that you don't have, and you are a vegetarian. So go ahead and divine on that and make cattle make sense for you. But it also means movable wealth. Which now in today's terms, which I had this little realization a few months ago, your social media posts. When you're in business, you can't put a social media post out there and let it go. No, you have to take care of it. You have to tend it. You have to look at the comments. You have to respond to the comments. You have to take care of it. It's like an animal. You have to take care of it. If you just let it sit there and die, it doesn't do you any good. So why do you have it? So movable wealth, and that's one aspect of movable wealth in our modern times. Another one is value. We have so many, I'm sure everyone does, storage units. Those places pop up like no other. And it talks about, that speaks to how we value our items, how we value our possessions. And, do they value us? And do we own them, or do they own us? Because you don't even look at it. It's in the storage unit, but you still keep paying for it every month. So, how do you view yourself, and how do you value yourself as a being, as a sexual being? How do you value yourself as, as a member of society, as a member of your family? It's a lot deeper than it can be, a lot deeper than just cattle.
Wow, we have so much to discuss as far as that goes. It's funny you mentioned the storage. I have seen storage as far in regards to people and in my own life for years. I've even had, I'm kind of like you. I've moved all over the country. I've kept storage units, literal storage units in numerous different states that I probably was never going to go back to. Didn't need anything in those. Yet I keep paying for them.
So. Oh yeah, and they're expensive.
Yeah,
they're expensive. It's not cheap.
No.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even make sense why we do that, and it's the same with in regards to anything in our lives that we don't let go of. As far as that goes. So
I'm sensing a theme tonight.
Yes.
Letting go of things and our value we place on the things that we hold on to, right?
And I was thinking that earlier too, everything I've been seeing on I don't even watch that much TV. I'll come across things on social media and stuff that keep saying this year, you either sink or swim and do this. I'm like, wait a minute, no, because then you're still struggling. You don't sink or you float. Like when you let go, you float. So
that I love that. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, absolutely because true. Even I don't care if you're diving, trying to swim, trying to or sinking, you're still trying to control whatever it is, So
there's a really interesting. I had a reading with someone not too long ago, and so I don't know how it works for you, and but when I'm connected, it's like one of those like do you remember those 3D like wheel things? So it's like someone clicks it and puts another like an image in my in my perception. And it took me a little bit to figure out in the beginning the difference between what my other mentor calls sock puppets in your head and then the real thing.
Right.
So the image I got for them was, okay, you live in the mountains and you live by a river. You need to get a message down to the coast to your cousin, and you can put the bottle in the river and let it go. But these people were literally like trying to dig a trench all the way down to then put water into to then carry the message. And I'm like, no, use the energy current that's already there. Use the flow that's already there. Quit trying to, reinvent the wheel. You don't need to. We need to be able to focus in on our connection at the moment and our access to the energy around us so that we're not constantly fighting to make things happen, to make things manifest. I think that's one of the kind of the big things I think that we're going to be learning. Okay, one of the big things I'm going to be learning, how to manifest these spiritual endarkenment ideas into our real physical world. It's not about going somewhere else. It's
No.
about bringing those here and manifesting them here into a physical thing. I think that's where I think that's my opinion about what's coming next.
Well, and when you speak of time, time's completely a human construct that we
Yep.
kind of hold ourselves to, which I think that's something in the future that's going to be changing as well, because anything when you deal with even like the pandemic and conflicts and things like that, you're not living in the present, because that's not our reality, around you in your space right now at this moment.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
but at the same time, we're human. It's hard to it is hard to not think about the past, not think about the future. I struggle with that all the time. So even though I know the concept, and well, I mean, I don't really know anything, but
well, we have to function here.
Yeah,
that's the hard part, right? We have to, and a lot of us who are very uncomfortable in our physical forms, we want out, but I kind of think that's why we're here.
right.
So, like, it's not really, it feels awkward, but we can actually make it not awkward. We just have to, I mean, I always think this is funny. So I can take this pen, it sits on top of my glass, and I want to move it with my brain, right? I want to telekinesis it. But why do I need to? I have a body to grab it and pick it up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there are certain things that are, I think it's amazing if you can do that. But use that energy to actually manifest something different, manifest a difference in your life, a difference in your patterns of behavior. Our gift is that we actually have chemical reactions happening in our body that allow us to translate the energetic currents that we feel on our body and into translating them so that we understand them better. But we kind of sometimes just want to shed the body instead of using it as the translator, as the Google translator that it is for those other energies and other people's energy as well.
I got off subject a little bit ago. I thought about something. Oh, speaking of energy and runes, do you make your own runes?
I do. The set that I just showed you, I've had these for a while. They're actually made of quake and aspen trees, which that tree is actually one that they say carries the voice of the other world. And they're outside my door. They're the trees I've loved since the time I knew what trees were. I do have a set that was made for me of bogwood that's actually yew tree.
Oh wow!
From Ireland. Yeah,
wow.
they were amazing. I have a set of oak that my friend made for me. I personally think, listen, just get crafty for a few minutes and make your own. I don't love mine made in stone at the moment. But I'm more connected with trees. So I think, in the very beginning, I took a little Fimo clay and carved them in them and baked them. And I made them that way as my very, very first set over a decade ago. They're meant to be, there's one rune Os, which I probably should have done before I started, but it's a rune of your relationship with your breath, which can go deeper. But if you're giving a speech or if you're doing something like this, you can draw it on a piece of bread with mustard or ketchup or put it on a cookie, whatever, and eat it. And they're meant to be interacted with that way and internalized and taken in. And it's kind of just an offering and a bringing into you of the power of that rune to be able to orate very well. Orate, yeah, that was the right word. Yeah, speak well and get your message across. In those terms, there are lusty runes. There's Notha's is a very lusty rune. Like if you're wanting to, get something going, that's a great rune to work with because it's very lusty, it's very passionate, it's very sexual. So shoot, like use it. Not in a bad way, but like partner with it. It loves the friction, it loves the energy. It's great when we can embody these things because we are those things. We just need to remember we're those things.
I always thought back about the runes that I would see in nature that I had taken pictures of, and then certain scenarios, I would remember, I guess, and
Yep.
that had happened. I'm like, oh, that actually correlates 100% to what that message I was getting prior to whatever event took place, and so
absolutely,
it kind of sparks that energy, into it, and then. I just became fascinated with the meaning and the history behind, which is still very limited as far as runes go. But I would love to, see more of your classes and things because
sure, thank you.
It's you have so much knowledge of it, and as far as books go, and things, I've probably started like 100. I really just need to do like I don't know, children's books for adults, if that's a thing.
No, I really think that would be absolutely helpful, especially spirituality.
Information.
Yeah.
Because that's how much my attention, Me
too.
My focus. I have ADHD and stuff, but to especially when it's something that you're trying to get across that's mind-blowing, because it's hard for us to, as humans, to process anything like this, especially symbolically. So
there's in my class I teach pre-pandemic, because I like to do it in person, because we do drum journey, we do drum meditation. We tackle 3 runes at a time. And my workbook actually has meditations, exercises, experiments, because I feel like maybe experiments was the wrong word. Exercises, thank you. The thing about that is I feel like it's great that we have all these books that talk about the runes and that give us knowledge, but until we put it into practice or until we experience it energetically and darken it, right, then we're missing something. We're missing the experience of it. And that's why I like doing things in person, or I can even, over Zoom. But there's something about experiencing and having experiences that connect you to it instead of just reading. And that's why I think I've really sucked at getting a book done, is because I'm just, someone else wrote about that way. Here are my experiences, but my experience, I really do truly feel like my calling is to introduce you, anyone, not you specifically, but people who come to work with me, introduce them, facilitate an introduction to the runes, let them build their own relationship with them. 1, 2, facilitate an introduction to themselves. Because most of the time we don't know. We're trying to search for who we are, and we put on a whole bunch of clothes trying to be these different people instead of going inside to figure out, who we are and what feels right.
Wow. That's amazing. I think,
I'm sorry, I can talk on and on and on.
I love it. I could too. I think it's given me a lot to think about because, as you're talking about these, I think, and I'm sure a lot of my listeners, because when you talk about, we can change clothes or do it, it's all of this is very symbolic in the last, year and a half with the shutdown because we've all been wearing masks. But I mean, technically, we were all wearing masks before that. It's just now we're wearing physical
Yeah.
masks.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
So I kind of always, related the pandemic as far as people being able to kind of a world reset to go within.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's amazing that people are now more curious to things like this. Plus it makes people like you and I not sound as crazy. We're
Thank
like
thank
I'm
the gods.
life, but
Um, it's really interesting. I think we're I think if we do not take the opportunity to reset, then you will be reset anyway. um, and so you can go willingly.
Mhm.
Okay, so there's a rune, Thurazaz, which is a rune of chaos and destruction, but I saw it and I've experienced it as a rune of deconstruction as well. So you can either be an active participant in the deconstruction of your life so that you can then reconstruct it, or you can sit in the storm cellar while the tornado whips your whole life around and tears it apart. You can do either. It's just actually better if you can say, okay, I'm going to take this apart, but this I'm going to keep because I actually want to use it later. This I don't really need anymore. We can send that to the recycling center, or let someone else see if they can use it. There's a real big difference in being able to be an active participant in your life or a passive one.
Oh gosh. I mean, ask me how I know.
Isn't it the truth? People don't learn from our mistakes. They want to make their own. I'm like, please don't learn from me. Just
Yeah.
learn from me, okay? Learn from mine.
Yes. It is much easier to be an active participant.
And much more enjoyable and
Absolutely.
much more enriching.
Absolutely. Um, one more thing I just came across recently, yesterday online. There was an entire discussion about all the runes being able to fit within an 8-pointed star.
Oh.
Speaking of, like, in reference to, it was the Elven star, which is interesting. I had never seen or heard that connection. So what is your...
That's new for me as well.
I'll have to send they had a whole chart and stuff. I'll have to send it to you. But
yeah, please. I think that's very fascinating.
I didn't know if I'm like, that's actually really, and one of someone just in relation to that, kind of, in the chat room, someone asked, shoot, I don't know, I'm new to this, I don't know how to show this. Has anyone got stories or of actual meeting with aliens? Which is off the subject, however.
I have seen a UFO though.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. And as far as runes,
mm-hmm.
A lot of, I guess, hieroglyphics, all kinds of things have, in spaceships have rune-looking languages on them. So what's your take on that?
I feel like if one thinks that they know everything, then you're gonna have your mind blown. Like our brain can't comprehend the world we live in, let alone the worlds out there. Like most of us have a hard time living in this world. It's going to be hard for us to comprehend living on another planet, working with other species. It's going to be very difficult. I kind of, I could get in trouble. I kind of feel like it's a bit. I would like to approach it from a place of being happy and content in my own body and with where I'm at, and meeting them on a level playing field, not expecting them to save me. And I do feel like that happens a lot in the spiritual community as well. A lot of with religion and spirituality, it's please save me. I'm not happy. Please save me. But I think we're gonna have to do that for ourselves, and then our life is different. And I think that's the same thing with, aliens and extraterrestrials. It's like, first of all, if they're looking down, they're like, yeah, you guys are fun. You're doing what for fun? Oh, you got enjoyment out of that. Okay, we're gonna pass. Like we got to figure our shit out as a species first.
Absolutely.
As a species. Okay, this is my okay. I have a little soapbox. Hang on, let me grab it. Oh, okay. I'm on my soapbox now. My soapbox is this: we think we're at the top of the food chain, and we're not.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that keeps us from progressing, is not understanding that we're part of a whole and we're part of a system in which the system will kind of get rid of us if we don't come into balance. So we're searching for balance, and that's something we should be striving for, I think, and balance and living on the planet that we're living on.
And as you said, getting out of this whole victim mentality of thinking that someone's going to come rescue us. Like, save yourselves. Save yourself. Like, no one's coming to save us.
Yeah. Yep. And I think, never mind. I was going to blame Christianity, but it is like there's always something. We always need an intercessor, right? Someone to intercede for us to make it okay. And that mindset right there immediately puts us into, we're never good enough. But you're good enough. I'm good enough. Every decision we've made is perfect, because at that moment we couldn't make any other decision than the one we made. The only reason we think it was bad is because we're looking at it from this point backward with more knowledge. That's it.
Oh, yeah, that's deep, but so true. So true.
Good thing I was standing on my soapbox. I didn't want to stand in the deepness of my, shoveling my manure sometimes.
So, well, Ken, we are out of time.
Dang it.
I know. It was getting amazing.
I know. We didn't even talk about my cancer or any of that stuff.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That is one of the main reasons. Friday is World Cancer Day. And that is another, I want to hear that. I want to hear all of your stories. I want to have you back on.
Love to.
You've been so much fun, and I think you and I have so much in common too. It's funny that again, the synchronicities. But I would love to hear your cancer survival story. I am also going to put all of your links on my Facebook page, and then of course you can also find your info. Do you prefer your website or your Facebook page?
Website's fine. I mean, either is great, but website's fine. So runewalker.com. Yep. And there are links to all of the podcasts there. The funny thing real quick is that the cancer actually ties into my journey. Once I began, not to culturally appropriate, we just don't really have a word, my shamanic journey. My spirit worker journey, once I committed to that and started that, in a lot of traditions around the world, you go through physical things. And I believe that once I decided cancer was one of those, having part of my tongue removed was one of those things I had to go through. And that was part of my path like that. Not just some random cancer thing, but part of that. Wow.
So I definitely want to continue this. I mean, you can next week if you would like. Next Monday if you would like. Otherwise, we can find another time. But
I'm down for whatever.
I definitely want to hear that story as well. As far as my listeners, thank you for joining us. You can catch me tomorrow night on Chasing Prophecy. So
Yay.
Good night, everyone, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.